Once upon a time, in the heart of a vibrant and bustling African kingdom called Umuoro, there was a beautiful and peaceful land ruled by King Amaka and Queen Amara. The king and queen were loved by all, but there was one thing missing from their happy life: a child. They prayed and prayed for many years, and finally, their prayers were answered. Queen Amara gave birth to a daughter, and they named her Ekemma, which means blessing. From the very moment she was born, everyone knew Ekemma was special. She had a twinkle in her eyes, and her laughter sounded like the sweetest music. The whole kingdom rejoiced, and there were celebrations and feasts that lasted for days. People from neighboring villages came to see the baby princess who brought so much joy to the kingdom. As Ekemma grew, it became clear that she was not like other girls. She was very strong, even as a little girl. While other children played with dolls and toys, Ekemma loved to climb trees and lift heavy stones. She could run faster and jump higher than any of the boys in the village. Her parents, the king and queen, were proud of her strength and encouraged her to be herself. But some people in the kingdom whispered behind their hands. They wondered why a princess should be so strong. A princess should be delicate and gentle, they said. How will she ever find a husband? Ekemma didn't care about what people whispered. She loved to help the villagers with their heavy work. She would carry big baskets of yams from the farm to the market and help build new huts when a family needed a home. The villagers grew to love her because she was kind and always ready to lend a hand. One day, when Ekemma was about 10 years old, a terrible storm struck Umuoro. The wind howled, and the rain poured down in torrents. The river that ran through the kingdom overflowed, and the water began to rise, threatening to flood the entire village. People were scared and didn't know what to do. But Ekemma sprang into action. She gathered the strongest men and led them to the riverbank. With her help, they piled up sandbags to stop the water from flooding the village. It was hard work, but Ekemma's strength and determination inspired everyone. By the time the storm passed, the village was safe, and the people cheered for their brave princess. From that day on, no one doubted Ekemma's strength. They saw her as a hero, and her reputation spread far and wide. People from other kingdoms came to see the strong princess of Umuoro. But as Ekemma grew older, the whispers started again. She was now a young woman, and everyone wondered when she would get married. When Ekemma turned 18, King Amaka and Queen Amara decided it was time to find a suitable husband for their daughter. They sent out invitations to all the neighboring kingdoms, announcing that Princess Ekemma was ready to marry. Suitors came from far and wide, eager to win the hand of the beautiful and strong princess. The palace was filled with young men, each one trying to impress Ekemma. They brought gifts of gold, jewels, and rare fabrics. They sang songs and recited poems praising her beauty and strength. But Ekemma was not impressed by their wealth or their words. She wanted someone who would appreciate her for who she was, someone who would love her not just for her beauty, but also for her strength and kindness. One by one, the suitors tried to win her heart, but none of them succeeded. Some were afraid of her strength, and others were only interested in her royal status. Ekemma saw through their pretenses and sent them away. The people of Umuoro began to worry. They loved their princess and wanted to see her happy, but they also wanted her to marry and secure the future of the kingdom. The whispers grew louder. Will no one marry our princess? They wondered. What will happen to our kingdom if she remains alone? Ekemma could hear the whispers, and though she tried not to let them bother her, she felt a pang of loneliness. She decided that if she was to find a husband, he would have to prove himself worthy of her. So, she came up with a challenge. Ekemma announced that she would marry the men who could complete 3 tasks. The first task was to defeat her in a wrestling match. The second was to climb the highest mountain in the kingdom and bring back a rare flower that grew only at its peak. And the third was to solve a riddle that even the wisest elders could not answer. The news of the challenge spread quickly, and many suitors left, realizing they could never meet such demanding requirements. But a few brave and determined men stayed, hoping to win the heart of the princess. The first task, the wrestling match, took place in the palace courtyard. Ekemma stood tall and strong, ready to face her challengers. One by one, the suitors stepped forward, and one by one, they were defeated. Some tried to use their strength, but none could match Ekemma's power. Others tried to use clever tricks, but Ekemma was too quick and smart for them. Days passed, and still, no one could defeat her. The suitors who remained began to lose hope. They saw Ekemma's strength and realized that it was not just physical but also the strength of her spirit. They understood that to win her heart, they needed more than just muscle. They needed courage, determination, and respect for her true self. Only a few suitors remained after the wrestling matches, and they were determined to complete the next task. Ekemma led them to the foot of the tallest mountain in the kingdom, called Mount Obudu. The mountain was steep and rugged, with treacherous paths and wild animals. At its peak grew a rare flower called the sun blossom, which only bloomed once a year. The suitors looked up at the towering mountain, and many of them were filled with doubt. But they had come this far, and they were not ready to give up yet. Ekemma wished them luck and watched as they began their climb. The climb was grueling. The suitors faced many challenges along the way. The paths were narrow and slippery, and the higher they climbed, the thinner the air became. Some of the men were not used to such physical exertion and quickly became exhausted. Others were frightened by the wild animals they encountered. But there was one suitor who stood out. His name was Jide, and he was not the strongest or the fastest, but he had a determined spirit and a kind heart. He had watched Ekemma during the wrestling matches and admired her strength and bravery. He was not afraid of her. Instead, he respected her and wanted to know her better. Jide climbed steadily, helping others along the way. He shared his food and water with those who had run out and encouraged them to keep going. He knew that the climb was not just a test of physical strength, but also of character. After many days of climbing, Jide reached the peak of Mount Obudu. There, in a small, hidden valley, he found the sun blossom. It was the most beautiful flower he had ever seen, with petals that glowed like the sun. He carefully picked the flower and started his descent. When Jide returned to the palace with the sun blossom, he was the only suitor who had completed the second task. Ekemma was impressed by his determination and kindness, and she began to see him in a new light. The final task was the most difficult of all. Ekemma presented Jide with a riddle that had puzzled the wisest elders of the kingdom for many years. The riddle went like this. I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, and I can drown. What am I? Jide sat quietly, thinking about the riddle. He knew that this was a test of his wisdom and understanding, not just of words but of the world around him. He thought about all the things he had learned and experienced, and slowly, the answer began to take shape in his mind. After a long silence, Jide looked up at Ekemma and said, "The answer to the riddle is fire." Ekemma smiled. He had solved the riddle that had stumped so many others. She knew then that Jide was the right man for her. He had shown his strength, his kindness, and his wisdom. He had respected her for who she was and had faced every challenge with courage and determination. The people of Umuoro celebrated the engagement of Princess Ekemma and Jide with great joy. They saw that Jide was a worthy match for their beloved princess, and they knew that together, they would lead the kingdom with strength and wisdom. The news of Princess Ekemma and Jide's engagement spread throughout the kingdom of Umuoro and beyond. The people were thrilled and eagerly awaited the grand wedding. Preparations began immediately, with everyone contributing to make it the most magnificent celebration the kingdom had ever seen. Queen Amara and the royal advisors busied themselves with planning every detail of the wedding. The palace was decorated with colorful fabrics and flowers, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blossoms and the sound of music. The best cooks in the kingdom were summoned to prepare a feast fit for royalty, with delicious dishes that would delight the guests. Ekemma, though excited, wanted to ensure that the wedding would reflect not only the grandeur of the palace but also the spirit of the people she loved so much. She visited the villagers, inviting them personally to the wedding and asking for their help in the preparations. The villagers were honored and happily offered their talents and resources. Jide, too, was busy. He wanted to prove to the kingdom that he was worthy of their princess. He worked alongside the villagers, helping to build the grand stage where the ceremony would take place and ensuring that everything was perfect. His humility and dedication won the hearts of the people, and they respected him even more. As the days passed, the excitement grew. People from neighboring kingdoms arrived, bringing gifts and best wishes. The palace grounds were filled with laughter, music, and dance as everyone came together to celebrate the union of Princess Ekemma and Jide. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and the kingdom of Umuoro was abuzz with anticipation. The sky was clear, and the sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow over the palace. The villagers and guests gathered early, eager to witness the joyous event. Ekemma looked radiant in her wedding attire. She wore a beautiful gown made of the finest silk, adorned with intricate beadwork and embroidery. Her hair was braided and decorated with flowers, and she wore a crown of gold that sparkled in the sunlight. But it was her smile that shone the brightest, reflecting her happiness and excitement. Jide, too, looked handsome and regal. He wore traditional attire that symbolized his new role as the prince. As he stood at the altar, waiting for Ekemma, his heart swelled with love and pride. He knew that he was about to marry the most amazing woman he had ever met. The ceremony was a blend of royal tradition and the customs of the people. Elders blessed the couple, offering prayers for their happiness and prosperity. There was singing and dancing, with everyone joining in the celebration. The sound of drums and flutes filled the air, creating a festive atmosphere. When Ekemma and Jide exchanged their vows, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. They promised to love, honor, and support each other, to rule the kingdom with wisdom and compassion, and to always stay true to themselves.